What's good, everybody? People need to go watch a movie. Oh, man. Oh. Oh. Yeah, so I'm just chilling. This is San Diego. I don't understand completely. I think what happened was there was a car chase here in San Diego. Anyway, we're right by police headquarters, and I don't know, it's a pretty small crowd. As far as I could tell, it's going to be pretty mellow. Some individuality, one person modeled by himself. Yeah, so it's pretty mellow. Yeah, it is right now. I'm here in California, and it's just basically, this is the police headquarters in San Diego. And looks like we have some exotic. Yeah. It's Friday night. The bloc is out. People are rolling up in style. I don't know. I'm not saying much because I don't want to attract too much attention. Well, before I didn't, but I think they got me covered now. I get to say everything I want. It's pretty mellow. I've been here a couple of times. Last time I was here was the fall. There was a skirmish. A couple people got arrested. But this crowd's always been. There was one time where they were like going to the outdoor diners kind of thing, going around. But that first weekend of May the 31st, there's video of that on YouTube. They did just like everybody else did in California. But since then, every time I've been here to the police headquarters, I haven't seen anything too remarkable. Sometimes some heated yelling or whatever, but that's it. I don't know if I'll stick around too long. It's they're singing no cops, no prison, total abolition. Not sure how that would work. It would be dope if they did like a drum line, like got really good drums. at like the Antifa drum line. That'd be dope. Oh, we lost the drum. They want their breath. They lost the drumstick. It's funny. All right, if you're just joining us, Antifa lost one of their drumsticks. And the question is how to get it back. It's comedy. All right, well, that was exciting. That was righteous. All right, I'll give you guys the play-by-play. What just happened? Because I couldn't shoot with both at the same time. I couldn't shoot with both cameras at the same time. But basically, what just went down is Antifa lost one of their drumsticks. and it went flying on the other side of the barricade, and they couldn't reach it. They couldn't reach the drumstick, and they said, "Please, please," to the cops, and they said, "No." Well, they didn't say anything. They just stood there, stone cold, without any compassion whatsoever.
Still on?
Yeah, it's still going. Late arrival. And so basically, if you rewind this once it's done, I don't know how good my camera work is because I was shooting with this camera and the other camera. So I'll post it to my Twitter. You can see my Twitter right there if you don't follow me. Follow me on Twitter at JLeeQuinn. If you're on YouTube watching this, please subscribe. It's a new live cast called Unblocked Live every Monday and Wednesday. I'm in San Diego, California. I just decided to come down because there was this protest. Basically what happened was there was a car chase, and a man had his like 9-year-old kid with him, and there's a lot of speculation online. Again, these things get mobilized on Twitter, and the way you do it is you create outrage on Twitter. We've seen it with everything. We've seen it with basically so much, like I can't even keep track of all the cancellations, but it happens on Twitter because basically what goes down is you get something trending, you get some outrage going, and that can manifest, as we just saw, in real life out on the street. In this case, in San Diego, they were able to get a picture of this arrest, and it looked like the cops were pointing the gun at the 9-year-old kid. Now, San Diego Police Department released the body cam footage to show that it was not the case, according to San Diego Police. I have not had time to review all of this, to be quite honest. I was working on a whole bunch of other stuff, but I just heard about it as I was on Twitter and stuff, so I decided to come check it out. Now, the highlight of that event was, now this is the other side right here where you can see they're all the way down there now. This is the police headquarters in San Diego, and they have this road blocked off, and basically the highlight was, you see these barricades here, they were drumming, and they lost one of their drumsticks, and it went flying onto the other side, and nobody would get it for them, and they were able to get a big stick and retrieve the drumstick. It was really, that was about it. So that's the excitement for the night. As you can see, they're still out there all the way down. I'm now on the other side of the block. Yeah, so Friday night in San Diego, California. Checking out the scene, the protest scene. Drums. It was all about the snare drum, and they weren't very good. I will say, I'm going to throw a little shade. If Antifa got like drumline good, and you had like the Antifa drumline, I think that would be something. I think people would come out and see that. Like if they went full drumline classes and you had drumline protests with like acrobatics. I'm spitballing here, you know? I think that all cops are bastard gets boring. Quite frankly. It's tedious. The rhythms of a lot of these chants are not complex rhythms. They drone a lot, and so I'm going to give some suggestions and just throw that out there, not to belittle everybody's efforts. So, any questions tonight? Let's check this out. Let's check out. Did you say Black Bloc is out? Is out. Oh, I said the Black Bloc were out, meaning like they're out in Black Bloc. Like I'm kind of Black Blocked. I'm all in black, as you can see. The flyer said wear black. What if I just showed up and I was like all in like bright colors? no, I said the black bloc is out, but I don't know. I think black bloc is still in, from what I can tell. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be in Minneapolis though. And here's an interesting thing: in Minneapolis, there's sort of some of the old school anarchists are kind of like, they're like, look, we don't have to do black bloc all the time, you know. There's also what they call soft bloc, where you're just kind of wearing everyday clothes but still obscuring your identity. So anyway, it's just a little inside baseball. I've been writing. A piece came out on a website called Spiked. Google Spiked Jeremy Lee Quinn, and I put my final sort of assessment about. I'm getting in the car here because it's cold. Got my surfboard here. Oh, I put my final assessment online, in which I talk about the right and the left holistically. That's to say, I don't pull any punches. I just call it as it is, and I sort of summarized for a British publication. So there's some funky spellings in there. They throw S's where there should be Z's. What else do they do? They add U's, like when you spell color. It's like O-U-R. So there's like weird things like, the dates. The dates are weird because they put like, if we're saying the 6th of January, and there's lots of photos. Check it out. Spiked. Google Spiked online Jeremy Lee Quinn. I think it appears second because the first one is my interview right after the Capitol. And then the second one, it says Jeremy Lee Quinn, stories by Jeremy Lee Quinn. Click on it and you'll see my photo essay. And I have a lot of photos up that are from the Capitol and from the streets, from Portland to Tacoma, Washington, to DC. So check that out. My piece is up. If you're tired, you can just look at the pictures, and those are cool too. But I'm glad I finally got it published, and I feel like I've put a lot into it. We have a really exciting cast. I should have plugged this earlier. A really exciting cast coming up on Monday. I have a reporter who, a young guy who got in touch with me, and his video is 2 hours of continuous video. He rolled continuously on a hidden camera at the Capitol, and he went in the Capitol. So I'm going to roll the whole thing straight with him on Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be really interested, and that's going to be here at J. Lee Quinn. Twitter is supposed to, that's my, at J. Lee Quinn. Twitter's supposed to cut off the live feed sometime this month, so hopefully it'll still be up on Monday. If it's not up here on Twitter, there it is, Unblocked Live. And that's youtube.com/unblockedlive. That's going to be a really interesting episode. He's going to join me. Again, a young guy from North Carolina, and he's been documenting a little himself. And he went to the January 6th to DC to the Capitol, and he rolled for 2 hours straight. We're going to watch 2 hours of continuous footage with no edit, and he and I will be, in a little box in the corner, and we might talk a little, we might bring up points here and there, but what's going to be unique about this experience is you'll know if you grab a bite to eat and hang out and watch, you'll see what it's like to walk from below, approaching the Capitol all the way up into the Capitol in one continuous shot. And I don't think anybody else has done that. I did a live stream that was very kind of, refracted. I didn't have a great signal, but once I got in to the congressional offices when they were destroying everything, I got a clear signal in there miraculously, because that was the money shot. So I'm grateful that the whole thing wasn't just refracted and jumpy. But this guy had a hidden helmet camera, and he just let it roll for 2 hours. So we're going to see that on Monday, on the Monday cast. We're going to roll tape, and you'll be able to experience in one continuous shot what it was like walking up into the Capitol and out. So spread the word about that. I think it's going to be interesting. Ever asked members what they envision society will look like without prisons or police? I could go back. That's, you try, and I think the best argument that could be made, which is not a logical one, in my opinion, is that that capitalism, I think they think, is the reason for our strife, our inequality, and so forth. So if you fix that and you create a utopian something, that all the ills of society will disappear because people will stop committing crimes. That's the theory, I guess. I don't believe it. I think human nature, I mean, this is funny because I was raised not far from Berkeley by two parents who went there, who were very left, and they would talk about, my dad had this friend, and his name was Billy, and it was like Crazy Billy, and he was a communist, and he refused to pay taxes, and he went to jail during the Reagan years because he wasn't going to pay his taxes. And so he was always principled, but I think eventually his wife got tired of his shtick because he was of being a full-fledged communist. But so I had this example in my life as a kid of the eccentric communist who's impractical, and so in my mind, I was always taught, well, they tried that in the Soviet Union. It doesn't work, ultimately. So I don't know. That would be an interesting question to ask, like go back and say, hey, how does society work? But when you get into these conversations and you challenge people, then you put yourself in, I mean, I really should. I probably next time should just, at this point, there's like, the project is basically over for me. I'm going to keep talking about it, but there's no need to maintain any pretense. I should have just walked up and said, hey, who wants to talk about what the new society after all this will be? But next time. That's a good question, and I'll bring that up. I haven't seen many of these comments. I hear those guys articulate with us as yeah. No, I'd like to hear it too, and I don't know. Maybe I'll go back. And I don't know. Do I feel like going back? Possibly. Let's look at some of these. The highlight of the night was the Antifa drumline losing the drumstick on the other side of the barrier, and the cops just standing there like, nope, we're not doing anything. And so they had to find a big stick and get it. And I don't know if I caught it on this camera, but I caught it on the other camera because on the high resolution, because Twitter's gonna love it, possibly. So you guys, please check back, spread the word about Monday. As you know, this is a small, intimate live cast, but Monday is going to be really interesting to roll that 2-hour footage, continuous with no cuts, from the guy's helmet cam entering the Capitol. And that's really hasn't been aired before footage. He's kept it. It's really funny. He kept it on his like Facebook, and it had like 9 likes, and like nobody ever. So it's so weird that there are these parts of history that are just sitting in the corners of the internet, like unwatched, like completely unwatched. And the guy contacted me. Oh, here's the spoiler alert. If you follow my work, if you go to publicreport.org, one of the most curious subjects I found was a neo-Nazi sympathizer who returned to the Capitol on January the 7th. And he talked about sympathizing with National Socialism, that they had to fight the communists. He also believed, in my interview with him, he believed that there was going to be some sort of coup, that Trump had signaled to the military. So he and like the true believers, from his point of view, were doing the bidding that was going to be backed up. He was inconsistent too, and he was taking credit. And we're going to be able to see him in the video on Monday. The reason I got in touch with this guy who's on Monday going to screen the 2-hour continuous footage of the Capitol is because he contacted me actually, and he said, "Is this the guy from your video?" And I looked at it and I was like, "Yeah, that's definitely him." And so you'll see the guy who claims that he coordinated the attack on the mainstream media pen, and you'll see him give a speech at an open mic. He takes the mic and he gives a speech, a rousing mission accomplished speech, and then he urges people to go to the governor's mansion, the mayor's house, the mayor of Washington, D.C. And that protest never really materialized. There were a lot of cops that found out about it, and I went over to see if anything was happening after the Capitol, and nothing was. But so you see him give that speech on the mic. But one thing I observed is he didn't have like a big crew with him. So you wonder if it's just like one person on their own that was there in tactical gear who wants to take credit for being a part of, one way, however you feel about it, of the history that was the Capitol riot. So you'll see that guy. If you haven't watched it, go to publicreport.org if you haven't watched my interview with him. And he says he's an extremist, and he's in this video. And that's how I got in touch with Stephen, who's going to be my guest on Monday. Check back with me then Monday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe on Twitter. Subscribe on YouTube. It's going to be an interesting watch. We're going to be able to watch 2 hours of continuous footage without an edit entering the Capitol from a helmet cam. So I'm going to try to stabilize it too, because it's a little bumpy. I don't want people to get motion sickness. There's a trick you can do on After Effects where you can zoom in and motion stabilize. It might, for 2 hours of footage though, I don't think I have the computer that'll actually do that. Let's see if any other comments, any other questions before I shut this down. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be really interesting. You're talking about here, those guys. It would be interesting to talk to those guys. Yeah, I should go back and say, hey, does anyone like the idea of doing drum lines and parades at protest? Yeah, in the spirit of a New Orleans funeral. Yeah, that's right. Hannibal Buress. Do you guys know the comedian Hannibal? He was on the Eric Andre show. He's a guy, I know him from back in my New York comedy days. And Hannibal would do this comedy bit about going to New Orleans and that you can just hire a funeral band. Like you could hire a band, and he just talks about just deciding, instead of spending your money on like booze, just to hire a band to follow you around on a night out in New Orleans. Anyways, it's a funny bit. It reminded me of that. Yeah, I like the idea of protests being a little more creative and not so freaking hateful. There's this one part in the live cast where she's like, we hate you, and it's just like, oh fuck, isn't there enough of this on Twitter? Isn't there enough of just we hate you everywhere? And so I personally think whoever wants some consulting on their protest techniques, I posted something on Twitter. They were doing some weird thing in Portland that had like puppets, fish puppets and stuff. And I was like, look, I'm fine with it. I'm good with it. This was at the Chase Bank. They were protesting a new pipeline proposal to be built in Portland. And this is the same Chase Bank. I think the video that was tweeted out by Andy No shows an officer draw a gun on the protesters, but Andy No called it an Antifa protest, and I think there was some back and forth. The Antifa aligned press, whose footage it was, changed their name intentionally to Andy No murders commas, because the whole joke, if you watch leftists read Andy No's book, which I haven't read yet, but I will read, the whole idea is that he doesn't know how to use commas or citations, and he doesn't know how to write. That's their whole shtick. So I'm just tired explaining this. But so the Antifa aligned press changed their name to an anti-Andy No joke. That was the whole thing. And then other people weighed in, and basically the thing was that, I guess, because nobody really answered me back. I had an interesting conversation before I left tonight with a couple leftists from Portland who are they came on, they gave me some heat. They're like, you don't know enough about Andy No, what? You just came here, not know. And I'm like, look, I'm learning. I'm doing my research. I'm going to read the book. I'm going to do my own research. But I understand their criticisms on with Brett Weinstein. I said, look, I understand the futility actually about what Andy No does, in the sense of reposting headshots. I always call them headshots. That's what us actors pay photographers to get our glamour shots. No, mugshots. The mugshots from Portland, unless it's to show us culturally what the rioters look like. I mean, I guess you could make a case for that. I just think, we got the point after a while. But the case that they make, and the reason they really don't like him, is they say, well, this puts people at risk, because people on the far right then see it and they retweet it, and they post it to Telegram or what have you. So it's a mess, and that's the problem with Andy No's work is it's always tailed by the extreme elements of his side of the political spectrum, and they hold him responsible for what's done as a reaction to his work, especially if he makes them. And look, I agree, you can't make mistakes in this. You have to be extremely diligent, and you can't go on emotion. And there's so many times where this is an interesting story. The night that Michael Reinl was shot, I made a mistake because I thought I saw something in the video contrary to Andy No, and so I tried to call Andy No out, and then I realized I was wrong, and I had to delete it. And that was my lesson in, don't get ahead of yourself. Don't be so excited because you think you've seen something and you want to prove Andy No wrong, or if I want to prove, someone on the left wrong. Don't get ahead of yourself. Take your time. So the reason that I have so few subscribers is because I'm not about courting engagement or controversy. I'm about getting it right. And getting it right means I file my story a week and a half later, maybe, and it's the time has passed, but it's there for history's sake, and it's correct, and that's what I can stand by. And so I'm thinking more long term. I'm not thinking short term internet engagement, get more followers, go viral. Even videos. Here's something that's interesting. Even if you have a video that goes viral, and I have had on Twitter, it doesn't mean you pick up followers. Most people just retweet it, click it, but they don't think to follow. Like the carryover. Let's say you have a video of 1 million. There are people who have a video with 1 million views, and their total follower count is like 6,000. And you have to ask yourself, well, what was it before? Was it 5,000 and they just picked up, 1,000 people from the viral video? So, just because you have that money shot doesn't mean that there's any sort of collateral to it. Likewise, a lot of these people in these in the Gina Carano Twitter mob, there were 5 accounts that had tweets of 10,000 likes or more. And as I told Brett, that's what you get. You get your 10,000 likes at the end of the day, and you can pin that tweet as a badge. And people will see you had a tweet with 10,000 likes. Congratulations. You're Twitter relevant, I suppose. But the problem is you just torched somebody's career as part of a mob where nobody actually read the actual article. And I also told Brett that with my article that I kind of plugged at the beginning of this live cast, my article for Spiked, which I called A Culture of Extremists, they actually changed it to We're Turning a Blind Eye to Extremism, which I was like, okay, that's fine. I wouldn't want somebody to change my headline, but I was like, in the end, I was just like, all right, I accept it. And there was another word I had to get them to change that was more important, so I focused on that. But no, I forgot what I was going to say. Check out the article. It has a lot of pictures. Oh, you Google my name, Jeremy Lee Quinn, Spiked, and it comes up second, I think, under authors, whatever. But even that article, it came out too late, It came out 2 months almost after the Capitol. So it was never going to be big or huge, but it was right. It was correct, Every word in it, I wanted to make sure was correct. So that's what I'm going for. And look, we all have the right to be wrong. And so if I am, I welcome feedback. That's the most important thing I'm realizing with Twitter, is not to get defensive with people that attack you. Every person who's attacked me, I've engaged with or come at me hard. I don't even consider it an attack. It's like, all right, come at me. And, some of them I've even engaged with dialogue after the fact. So I think that's a secret for more than just Twitter, but life, which is, in the end, when people come at you, engage and de-escalate. If all of this is, and this is why I don't trust this utopian society, if all of this is supposed to be about de-escalation, that they can de-escalate better than the establishment, than the authorities, I haven't seen any proof of it. I haven't seen proof that they're great at de-escalating, because they're yelling, fuck you, I hate hate the police, and all cops are boss. It's not de-escalating. So nobody's shown me any proof yet that the replacement society is anything more trustworthy than what we already have. I'm open to it. Show me something. But as far as people's temperaments are concerned, and the way that the truth is sacrificed for emotion and political passion, I'm not buying it. Let's see. You're shocked and appalled that so few people are watching this. Well, it's a Friday night, and we've got a couple people on, and this does stream to another platform. So it's just me sitting in a car. They're going to be clearing out because this is rain. I'll go around the block, see if they're all getting rained on. It's starting to rain here in San Diego. I'll just keep this running and take you guys on a drive of San Diego in the rain. I don't expect people to watch my work. I haven't really been launched. There's nothing, but I should promote what's going to go down on Monday if I knew how. It's going to start. This is a person on a bike. Once I put on the windshield wipers, You're not going to be able to see it probably, but I'll just show you where the police... This is the police station on the other side. Let's see if everybody's running to their cars. People park here. 13th Street. This is where I walked back from. Yeah, so Monday, y'all, is going to be really interesting. We'll play that 2-hour clip inside the Capitol with Steven from the East Coast. So this is, it looks like they're all gone because of the rain. This is where the protest was. But they pieced out with the sprinkles. You see a couple police officers just chilling. The highlight, I'll post it on Twitter. The highlight was the drum line. Oh, here's somebody with their drum. Or no, that's, I don't know what that is. The highlight was the drum line tonight, y'all. And especially when they lost their drumstick and you had the dramatic moment. Oh, here's a couple people. Everybody's just kind of hanging at this restaurant. Is that what's going on? I don't know. I shouldn't say. No, I think those are just normal outdoor diners. Oh, San Diego. So what is up? I don't know if you can see any of that. It's not the easiest with the lighting. Why do so few people tune into my work? Well, I actually think I can do better work under the radar than if I had all this heat on me. 'Cause the fact that I'm still insignificant gives me the ability to talk to people even still. The second that my work becomes too noticed, people are going to dissect every little thing and they're going to try to, pigeonhole me as right or left, which I've already told everybody. I'm culturally left. I've never voted right, so it's not really a secret. But I think what's going to happen is if anybody ever discovers my work, there'll be a motion to... It's better to get to know everybody when you're nobody, because then it's easy to attack somebody who you don't know and have never spoken to. Even if we're just talking online, if you treat people fairly online, even when they attack you, the next time they might not attack you. I think the strategy is just talk to people and address their concerns. Someone said to me, "You stood up for Andy, you defended Andy No, you don't understand." I'm like, "No, I haven't defended Andy No yet. I might, I don't know. I haven't read the book yet." Likely, I've already told people that the title itself, the argument I made was the title is like Antifa, how blah, blah, blah is destroying attack on democracy. And I said that would be like having a book called Supremacy, blah, 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 the attack on diversity. It's very simplistic and it doesn't address the actual... Antifa has never been a monolith. There's no head of Antifa. There's... I say Antifa now instead of Antifa just because I just have Trump in my head saying Antifa, and so I can't say it, so I say Antifa. But also the first Antifa guy I interviewed was this guy, Daryl Lamont Jenkins, who's on alt-right Age of Rage. He went up against Richard Spencer back in the day. It's on Netflix. It's an interesting documentary. Those people who are here watching me on a Friday night must be interested enough to want to know what's behind a lot of this. my theory on Charlottesville, and Ford Fisher backed me up on this in the sense that he came on my cast and said that after Charlottesville, those alt-right, like ethno-nationalist types, their leadership was decimated. A lot of them had to face charges, for Charlottesville. And so the people at the Capitol is not the same crowd necessarily, though there could be some individuals that are overlapping. But overall, the determination when studying the makeup of the Capitol rioters is that 80 to 90% of them were unaffiliated. They didn't belong to a militia or the Proud Boys or anything like that. So it's a much more populist type of extremism that manifested on the 6th of January. If you want to check out Charlottesville, here are two good Charlottesville picks. One is Alt-Right Age of Rage. You will see Daryl Lamont Jenkins in that, who in my original podcast, it was called Uncovered Anarchist. And then I realized that would have limited appeal. It still exists. You can Google it and find it somewhere. But Uncovered Anarchist was going to be about candid conversations with anarchists and Antifa-aligned people and find out what they were thinking and so forth. Now, a lot of them put the word out to not talk to me. So, gosh, I should have asked that question though. How do you envision that society without police or prisons? Really, how does it go? But I've talked to a lot of interesting people for that one. Daryl Lamont Jenkins, as I said, we debate about Andy No, because we debate the terms of who's a propagandist. I turned around on him and said, well, aren't you a propagandist for the left then? And so we had an interesting conversation. You can see Daryl as basically the star of alt-right Age of Rage because he goes up against Richard Spencer and he wins. He's still somebody I follow on Twitter, though he won't associate with me because my views were considered my views of being critical of Antifa tactics. It was sort of deemed by some not to talk to me. So it'll be interesting to see if people start talking to me, especially now that, with all this research that I've done on the Capitol, I feel like people understand that I wasn't I was there. I started looking for white supremacists. I ended up finding anarchists and, even communists and anarcho-communists and stuff. And so I got hung up documenting that. And then, boom, then I went back to covering the right because they, ever since November, December, after the election, all the fights in DC. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle to cover two sides, honestly, because if I was relying on payment or audience engagement, if I cared about, that number of people who are watching, I would be constantly wanting more engagement. And when you want more engagement, that affects how you present material because you don't want to offend the people who are watching you. And so there's this unconscious bias that builds up just because if your audience leans left or right, that if you present something critical, you're going to lose followers or what have you. And so it's been a challenge in the sense of to maintain your contacts too, because we are so polarized. People said the big criticism of Andy No was, well, he was embedded or he was with Patriot Prayer, and Patriot Prayer got in a fight. And I think it was called the Cider House or Cider Riot or whatever. It was at some cider bar. It's so Portland. Riot at a cider bar. Um, I'm just, if you didn't know that it was people that were LARPing with helmets and stuff, you would imagine it to be like old timey, twirly mustache Portlanders rioting in a cider bar. That's not what it was. It was Patriot Prayer versus Antifa aligned groups in Portland, and it took place. Gosh, I want to say 2019 in June or so, end of June or something. I gotta get, this is all new material for me that I'm going through, but so I'm not an expert on it. But I will say this: what's interesting and what I'm finding out in parsing is that, and this is interesting. A lot of Andy No's reputation is built on his adversaries' portrayal of him. And the reason is that there's a story about a guy named Ben who's there that day and records Andy No following the group of Patriot Prayer people. Now, he's not interacting. He's basically what we call shadowing. And I did this in DC. I shadowed the Proud Boys, which is you blend in and you walk. I was shadowing just now. At the beginning of this tape. Look, I'm all in black. I have a mask on, and I'm trying to look like I'm not an adversary of the cause because I don't want any trouble. So I wasn't even talking at the beginning. At the beginning of this broadcast, it's just black for the first 2 minutes because I'm trying to figure out if I could take the camera out, what the situation is. And when I do take the camera out, I'm not pointing it in people's faces. If two people were talking about operation, see, this is interesting. Okay, so right now, if I was at that rally and three people were talking about operation, and I didn't stick my camera in the face to record it, people could make the argument, well, he's an Antifa sympathizer. He was there. They were talking about attacking the police, and he didn't he sat in the back. Well, that's exactly what you have to do. You don't shove your camera into a group that is in sort of what you call combat mode with another group. You just wouldn't, because that would put you in danger. Now, when the conflict gets going, you record it and you try to capture as much as you can, of course, but you have to be very strategic about when you're pointing a camera in somebody's face. Anybody who's been out in the street knows that. But the problem is these people who are writing these articles are not people who are necessarily been out of the street. So the Rolling Stone article is written by somebody in New York. And the Rolling Stone article quotes an article by the Portland Mercury. Portland Mercury is decidedly left. So much so that they have an article up that says, if you're not anti-fa, you're the fa. Meaning if you're not, and it's this talking point that I even bought into back in June. Well, yeah, if you're not, that makes sense. If you're not anti-fascist, then you're a fucking fascist. And it's a bullshit. It's an empty talking point. It's manipulative because it gets you to disengage from the actually what's going on and just automatically say, yeah, I'm against fascism. Well, you know what? There's other people who are against fascism that are on the right that are decidedly disavow fascism. But the problem with everything with the internet mentality is, no, you're a fash. It's labeling. So Andy No's association or presumed association with Patriot Prayer comes down to this one video that's shot by somebody named Ben. Ben was supposed to reveal his actual identity to the Portland Mercury. Now, I've reached out to this guy. I know his real name. And he's not contacted me back. I'm not holding my breath. I would have an honest conversation with him, not only about that, but I'm curious about other stuff. Look, it really comes down to the truth. If Patriot Prayer is as bad as, the Antifa adversaries say they are, then show me the proof. But I've been parsing videos, for a while, and there's a couple of things that aren't that people aren't being honest about, you know? So I really want to know, I want to know basically what the conviction. Now, I understand what Andy No does is adversarial and partisan, but what is the smoking gun? What shows him as a collaborator or as complicit? I mean, to some extent, when you're documenting, you can't go against a group that you're trying to blend in with, or else you might get your ass kicked. And the reason I haven't gotten my ass kicked or had many confrontations is because I'm really careful. I mean, you guys, if you watch this video, it's not great video because I'm not today, because there wasn't a lot going on, and I didn't stick my camera, every which way. So just like I shadowed this protest, I've shadowed the Proud Boys in Portland and in DC. And when I say shadowed, I mean I've blended in and I've documented as much as I can what's going on without exposing myself as somebody that might record something or report something that reflects badly on them. Because let's be honest, they've both been doing bad shit. So what you do is you try to blend in and shadow, and you record the material, and then you post it all. You post if it makes one side look bad or the other. I mean, you really should. And we all have to wrestle with our biases. You're a liar if you say you have no biases. At certain times, in the last year, I have been biased to the left. At certain times, I've been biased to the right. And you have to check yourself constantly and make sure that you're putting the material out fairly. And I retweeted something this morning about the Proud Boys. There's a picture of them all came out, with them making, like, a couple of them. They're wearing Proud Boy shirts. They're on some sort of sandy beach area. And a couple of them are making the OK sign, which doesn't necessarily mean white power. It basically means, my interpretation of the OK sign, it means fuck you to the left, basically. Because it doesn't necessarily mean that. It means they're trolling the left into thinking it means something more than it does. But really, the OK sign is only an OK sign. So you're fucking stupid if you fell for it. Dumb game to play, because every journalist has fallen for it. And every journalist has run with the Proud Boys being white supremacists based on the OK sign. Whereas doing OK just basically means fuck you, liberals, you dumb libs, or whatever they're thinking in their mind. I think it's probably pretty accurate to that. But in this picture, they're not just doing the OK, they're doing like a Zig Heil. So that picture came out this morning. I retweeted it. And there's a long thread in which I'm conversing with people from the left about, well, what does this mean? The big question is, were there neo-Nazis all along in the Proud Boys? Because the Proud Boys had insisted they're not ethno-nationalists. And, again, just like Antifa is not a monolith. The Proud Boys have individual chapters, and they're not controlled either. So I in my conversation with Daryl Lamont Jenkins back last fall, we talked about, I said, we know that there's going to be some white supremacists there within the Proud Boys, but is the Proud Boys, okay, let's say you have the Proud Boys, and then you have some white supremacists in the Proud Boys. Are the white supremacists radicalizing the Proud Boys and making them more racist? Or are the Proud Boys making the white supremacists within their ranks more moderate? That is a question that not a lot of people I think are willing to ask, but I think it's an interesting one, because my question was always, okay, let's say you win and the Proud Boys are gone forever. Well, where do they go? Do you think they just all of a sudden decide, okay, we got beat. Let's all become democratic socialists. No, probably not. They're probably going to be sent to the far corners, and we already know that this is happening. The far corners of the dark web or encrypted chat rooms, and they're going to be more pissed off and more deplatformed, and then more bad shit's going to happen. My argument, I didn't always say I'm 100% sure on this, but I asked the question: aren't we better off with a moderating group like the Proud Boys that is out in the open where we can see them? And that if you're Antifa, wouldn't you want to know? Isn't it better to have your enemies? They always say keep your enemies close where you can see them. It just didn't make sense to me. And I think this is where there is no leadership, there's no strategy. It's just people want to fight. And so they're not even thinking of the consequences of is it going to be any better when we win, quote unquote win. Because what is winning? Did you really win when everybody got deplatformed from Parler and then got ridiculed and sent, no, I don't think you won. I think people just got madder, and they could get madder even still. I think you win with engagement and with not being addicted to the fight. And a big problem right now is I think a lot of people are addicted to being adversarial on Twitter as well. There's a kind of addiction with the dopamine hits and the rush and all of these situations where people got pissed at Gina Carano, or when they get to say whatever slur they want about whoever they hate, whether it's Andy No on the right or whether somebody on the right hates, somebody on the left and says something awful. It's all the same, and kicking that addiction to this sort of online troll culture, that's going to be the win. It's going to be the big win, I think. You know the story about how the Proud Boys were created? I think I do, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is that the founder of the Proud Boys, Gavin McInnes, who ran in the kind of the comedy circle. I was in New York in the comedy scene, probably around the time I must have just left and come back to California, but I was in the comedy scene, and so comedy in New York has a lot to do with this, because Gavin McInnes would run in the comedy scene. The thing that you should know about Gavin McInnes are two things. One, he used to be an anarchist punk singer in Canada. So he was in the conflict back in the 90s when the anarcho punks would get into brawls with the neo-Nazi punks. And he would sing or scream, yell, or whatever you want to call it, in a punk band. And there's a picture of him with a crossed out Nazi sign painted on his chest. And he's part of the anarcho punk scene when he's, young, like a teenager. Now, he went on to create hipsterism in Brooklyn. I was there during all that hipsterism stuff. I didn't know him. I never met him. But what I did know was a lot of comedians that were kind of free speech, white male centric, in the New York City comedy scene, and that was just something that was always talked about. It's just how white male dominated the comedy scene was in New York. The stand-up scene was in New York City, and basically what would happen is they would the comics would provoke the bloggers. So they would push the envelope. And there was a woman named Liddy West, and there's a show now that I think she wrote or created, in which that Andy Bryant or something from Saturday Night Live plays her. She's the bigger woman comedian who's on Saturday Night Live. And she plays Liddy West, or Liddy West's. So anyways, Lydia West was this blogger, and she would call out white male hostility. So rape jokes, like all of this free speech stuff that would happen, and she would be sort of policing them, and they would get pissed off and push back even more. Now, a lot of this happened around the Opie and Anthony show. Opie and Anthony was another one of these like free speech, white male, say whatever you want kind of shows. Say whatever offensive shit you want. They eventually got canceled, I think. Anthony Cumia got into a fight. He was attacked by a black woman near Times Square. It was a big thing. He got fired. He said some things that were inappropriate. He got like attacked, and then characterized it in a uncouth way, and then he got fired. Then he started his own radio thing, and I think Gavin McInnes, founder of the Proud Boys, was part of that. Now, Gavin McInnes has anarchist tattoos. There's a video on YouTube of him showing off his anarchist tattoos and other tattoos and making fun of them in kind of a funny, and if dare I say, entertaining way. He doesn't have ethno-nationalist tattoos. Now, that particular video is not Proud Boys related. I'm just telling you guys that exists, and it's interesting. I'm going really the long way about how the Proud Boys were created. So Gavin McInnes is now a part of this network that Anthony Cumia has. And after he gets fired from the Opie and Anthony show, I think he goes to Sirius, and then he becomes part of something else, and I forget the name of it. And so it's a really New York comedian based. And his intern, Gavin McInnes' intern, and I can't remember, they had some nickname for him. And they were kind of, teasing him because they saw him as kind of like beta male that likes musical theater. And so they're teasing him about this and how he needs to get laid. And so they're going to create a club, a gang called the Proud Boys, based on his favorite Aladdin song, or that this song that Gavin McInnes would sing to him to make fun of his love for musical theater. Now, the funny thing is, I fucking love musical theater. I just performed Music of the Night last night for my community college online class. Like, I love musical theater, and I know nothing about this Aladdin musical because I'm not about rehashed Disney musicals. I draw the line somewhere, is what I'm saying. So the funny thing is like, that's actually, the musical thing is kind of my world, being a theater person. But Gavin McInnes makes fun of this intern for being a theater person. They name the Proud Boys after the Aladdin song. They go out drinking to get him laid. And what ends up happening with the rise of Trump is the group becomes more kind of under attack and policed online as far as what their unpolitically correct behavior is, but also he comes out as somebody who supports Trump, and that's the beginning of the end. The Proud Boys then starts doing in when was the big fight at the Republican Club in Manhattan? I want to say that's after Trump's elected. But the big fight where two Proud Boys are charged, and I think one of them is Jewish too. So this is why all the ethno-nationalist stuff never fucking was real. It was all people who support Trump are automatically a Nazi. That's all that fucking shit was, or a fash or whatever. I'm just saying, I'm not defending any of this shit. I'm just telling you, when you really look into it, when you really get the story, basically what they started doing is you had these provocateurs, like actual provocateurs. I don't even think provocateur applies to Andy now. I think it could for his online behavior, but not necessarily for, well, maybe it can. I don't know. Fuck it. I don't want to get into it. But what's interesting is, so you have these genuine provocateurs like, what are their names? Oh, Milo Yiannopoulos, right? Then there was a woman, I can't remember her name, want to say, I think it was like Loomer or something. I don't know, whatever. These people, if they would go to give speeches at college campuses, they would get not just heckled, but things would be thrown at them, and there was the risk of being attacked. So the Proud Boys started, becoming like a security detail, where they would meet these provocateur types coming into New York, and provide security escort service to Columbia University or NYU or whatever. And so this person speaking Columbia and the Proud Boys would go along as sort of security detail. They were being sort of, I don't know. I don't want to characterize it. I'm just telling you what it is. But then you would have these fights, especially in Berkeley. Now, it's unclear to me regionally, scene by scene, as to who's showing up in 2017 to whose events. And this is interesting. So with Patriot Prayer, I was talking about the Portland Mercury. That story about Andy Ngo is based on a guy named Ben who was infiltrating Patriot Prayer. And he said his stated goal was to take it down from the inside. So that's your source, somebody who is Antifa aligned for the entire story and hasn't given his real name. And again, this Portland Mercury, the only story about Antifa is if you're not Antifa, you're the FA. So they are not a reliable, nonpartisan source. They are an activist perspective. And so if you know then that the Rolling Stone article is based on the Portland Mercury article, which is solely based on Ben, the Antifa aligned person, then you realize that the characterization is not reliable. You need a second source when you're in a situation like that as a journalist. You cannot just go on, well, Ben says that Patriot Prayer says that Andy Ngo is there under their protection if Andy Ngo gives them favorable coverage, according to Ben, who is an anti-fascist aligned infiltrator taking down Patriot Prayer, telling it to the Portland Mercury, whose only article on Antifa is if you're not Antifa, you're the FA. Now that's Rolling Stone basing everything on that chain of when you trace the chain of custody, it goes all the way back to one person who a journalist empirically looking at that would not base their story on that one person's testimony. So immediately you start digging. Then there's another story, which is that there wasn't cement. And this is all local news, Portland scene stuff. There's another story that Katie Shepard, who is now the Washington Post, puts out, which is this Mythbusters thing, that it's a lie that there was any cement contained in the milkshake that was thrown at Andy Ngo. And so it's this Mythbusters. God, I get off this subject fast. But I answered the question about how the Proud Boys were created. Let me go on with this. So Andy Ngo, this is interesting. This is all my research in the last 48 hours that I'm finding out. And look, this is not Andy Ngo apologia. I'm just giving you guys the real story here and the journalistic fallacies that are in place. Now Andy Ngo could still be wrong on other fronts. I'm just saying that the one that Rolling Stone convict him on is shady. Now, him publishing photos of arrestees, I've already said I don't like doxing at all, but then they're doing it for every single person who is at the Capitol. So how is that different? So it's just, I don't like hypocrisy. I don't like doxing. I'm against it. I'm against it all. So let me continue. This other video that Katie Shepard is a part of is this of the Washington Post. And this is why the Washington Post is so one-sided now, is that they have people within their ranks who are basically collaborators. But she posts this Mythbusters video. They take these vegan shakes that were provided by, I think it was called Pop something. There's so many new names I have in my head now. I'm like trying to figure it out. They put out the vegan shakes when you're at these protest events, and then you could throw the shake on people, right? I'm not saying that happened all the time. I don't know. We're just talking about this one time with Andy No, where he gets beat up and as well. So regardless of whether you think there's cement in the shake or not, he gets beat up. By the way, it's the Portland Police Bureau. It's the police that say that there's cement in the shake. But the Rolling Stone article says that Andy No's a troll because there wasn't cement in the shake and because he really was embedded with Patriot Prayer. Now, both of those accounts that the Rolling Stone makes the troll conclusion on are not reliable. Again, one of them is from the Antifa infiltrator into Patriot Prayer, and who is characterizing again, as I said at the beginning of this conversation when I pulled over, just because he's looking at his phone, not sticking it in the face while he's shadowing, that's exactly what I did just now with the Antifa San Diego against the Fash. I wasn't pressing my camera in their face when they're discussing stuff. That doesn't make me an Antifa collaborator. So the fallacy is that these people don't understand what it's like to be in the streets, shadowing, trying to get the footage, and not get your ass kicked. Basically, they don't understand shit. So the Rolling Stone article labels no. Oh, and here's the Mythbusters thing. They take a bag of dry cement and they take a dummy and they pour the dry cement in the vegan shake and they start splashing at the dummy to prove that it somehow doesn't splash like it did on that Andy No. So therefore it's made up that there was cement. What they're totally fucking neglecting is that there's such thing as liquid cement that you buy and you can just squeeze it into something, and that's more practical than taking a huge bag of cement and trying to mix it into a shake like it's some kind of, God, do you ever drink those like gym, like whey protein supplements and stuff? It's impossible. You have to like stir that forever and it sucks and it just comes out as chunky at the bottom. What I'm saying is when you have already liquid cement, you would just pour it in there. You wouldn't take a bag of cement. I'm saying the ridiculousness when you trace journalistically going back to local Portland journalism, it's an absurd, incestuous ecosystem in which you're either on one side or the other. Now, what's happened is that mentality transferred itself to the national stage come 2020. But it shouldn't be that. As journalists, we should be looking at both sides critically and saying, okay, this is bullshit. This isn't. This is true. This I still have a problem with, and calling it like it is. So the thing that's so fascinating is this one Rolling Stone article that's based on the Portland Mercury article, that's based on the Antifa infiltrator who's not giving his name, whose name I know. And again, he won't respond to me, and I bet you he never will, because this is not. And if he doesn't respond to me, I think you can then say that this is the people who say that this happened are not willing to stand by it and support it. Therefore, Rolling Stone should retract their story, because Rolling Stone in the headline in the conclusion says this person's a troll. Well, guess what? All of Portland says he's a troll. That's on the left. All you're doing is you're appropriating a labeling from the conflict itself. So, and maybe, look, I'm open to it. Show me more evidence that he is, and I will look at it. But based on what Rolling Stone has said, take fast forward to last week, the Mumford and Sons, the Mumford incident. A banjo player from Mumford and Sons tweets that he just finished reading Andy No's book, and Andy No is very brave, and congratulations, or whatever. the internet goes apeshit. He's called a fash, which is typical. It's just name calling. All these people haven't read the book. They haven't read the book. I would not be surprised that of the hundreds of people that called the Mumford and Son banjo player a neo-Nazi, if zero of them read the actual book. This is where we are right now, people. He gets called, if you Google, who was it? I think it was the LA Times on their Mumford and Son. They have a hyperlink that takes you to a search for the Mumford and Sons banjo player and the word Nazi. And it just scrolls all the way down. Everybody's calling him a Nazi just because he said he read the book and he thought that it was brave. Now, all the other publications that jump on board are calling Andy Ngo a troll. This is the AV Club, which is associated with The Onion. This is the Hollywood Reporter. I think they used provocateur. Other people called him an extremist and an agitator. A lot of them, when you click on it, the labeling takes you to the Rolling Stone article. So you have tweet storms that are brewing online where people are just throwing the label Nazi. You Nazi, you said Andy Ngo was brave, you're a Nazi. So you have this shelling going on Twitter. Then the tabloid will jump in first. The tabloid, the default tabloid is the Daily Beast. They're always first. The Daily Beast is uncanny. If you smell shit on the internet, take that shit, put it in a search bar and type in @the Daily Beast and you'll find out where the shit came from. That is how consistent I'm spitting poetry tonight. That is how consistent the Daily Beast is at being in the middle of a shitstorm. And it's because that's their MO. They are courting this audience to jump on their trends. So if they see something is trending that's leftist trending, they will jump on that trend and they'll publish an article about it and it'll have some sensational labeling to it. Blah, 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 Andy Ngo troll. Whatever. You could have a monkey in the Daily Beast offices that just has like troll conspiracy theorists, and the monkey just throws his shit and the little pieces of paper that say conspiracy theorist, troll, or whatever, and then the editor-in-chief of the Daily Beast, his name's Noah, like just gathers it up and gives it to one of the 20-year-old writers and says, hey, make this into a news article. Okay, I'm being funny. It's Friday night. I'm allowed to loosen up a little. Just to conclude all that, Noah of the Daily Beast, come on my podcast, defend that you guys are not in the middle of the shitstorm. That's what that metaphor is that Daily Beast, you are always in the middle of these Twitter shitstorms. Come onto my podcast, defend that you aren't just shit slingers, because I believe that you are, Daily Beast. And even when my article came back in the New York Times, a Daily Beast, this is how cowardly, a Daily Beast reporter contacted me. Because the one thing that's confusing in the New York Times article is it stated that I saw people who are wearing the same masks and the same like hoodies and stuff, like city to city. Now it's not the same as the guy with a latex mask. I saw a guy with like a literal like it's called Bingo. It's this old man mask when I was in Santa Monica the first day, and it was really weird and creepy. And that's on the early stuff in my website. But the masks that I saw mostly, I meant, were the gas masks that Umbrella Man had, with like the pink ventilator, cartridges and stuff. Now that might have gotten confusing, but so this reporter from the Daily Beast is like, well, what kind of masks were there? I want to talk to you. He was kind of prying it out. I find this interesting. And then I told him, and then he wasn't interested in speaking to me anymore. He was never really interested in doing the story. He wanted to debunk it. Because if it was true, if he had a story from me that was true about the left doing all this coordination, well, he couldn't run that in the Daily Beast. The Daily Beast can't run that because everybody will they'll go apeshit. Their audience is they need to keep their trending audience. In other words, I realize I'm running out of batteries. I should plug in here 1 second. So, anyways, then I look on this guy's fucking Twitter, and he's mocking me. So he approaches me, but then he mocks me on his Twitter, and this is how disingenuous and stupid all of this is. And he's welcome. Will, you're welcome to come on my podcast and defend yourself. But this is, and then so I posted a video of some of the coordination, and it's just like silence because everybody that's on the thread is Antifa aligned. And I'm just posting videos on this thread in which he addresses me. So, so if you're interested in the truth, you're going to fucking get it. But where was I with all this? Okay. So you have everybody being a dick and just saying, fuck you, you're a Nazi. You said Andy No's book was brave. This is hurtful, or whatever. I don't know. And look, you can make an argument that some things that Andy No has done, the Dayton article, I've already on Twitter been posting about that and dialoguing with some leftists. And I agree that the Dayton shooting assessment in the New York Post by Andy No is faulty. And that's just as much on the New York Post. And what happened was there was a mass shooting in Dayton, and there was a mass shooting in what was it, Santa Fe at the same time. That was the Walmart shooting. The Walmart shooting was of the right and wrote a manifesto, that shooter did, a racist manifesto, right? So that one was more linked to the dangers of alt-right ideology. The Dayton shooting was a stretch. And so the same way that I broke down the fallacies that attack Andy No, now I'm going to break down the fallacy that's actually in his work in the Dayton article. And I can't remember what it's called, but it's a bad headline too. It's like, could this be the first Antifa mass shooting? That's a bad headline. It's leading. The New York Post has not done done well. They're not a publication that is very far off from being a tabloid at times. But what's problematic about this tabloid-esque article written by Andy No that kind of catapulted him onto the scene, nationally at least, is that he tries to make the case that the Dayton shooter who showed up at a bar and killed people was Antifa aligned. Now, the shooter was definitely culturally left, and he definitely partook in this sort of Twitter thing of just calling everybody a Nazi. But that doesn't necessarily make the shooting Antifa aligned or motivated politically. And the reason, the biggest piece of information that Andy No leaves out is that the shooter's sister was at the bar and shot and killed. So the guy had this, and the New York Times does a much better job, a real investigative job of who this person is, that he was mentally troubled, bipolar. I mean, that obviously I don't want to stigmatize that, but there were mental issues that were tied to violence, and there were signs, and he killed his sister along with other people. So that's more significant than the guy was left aligned and was, saying thumbs up to certain articles or what have you. It's not a clear motivator. So the article is faulty, I would say. I don't give it a pass. Is he allowed to be wrong? Yes. But the way Twitter works is you just call him a name and tell him he's dangerous instead of taking the time to do what I just fucking did, which is explain, compared to the New York Times investigation, where there are holes in Andy No's Dayton article. And that's the way you deal with it, is you work harder, and you present the fallacies of the piece, and that's how you make it less dangerous, is by debunking it. But everybody's too lazy to fucking do that. So anyways, that was a little detour on Dayton. I guess that's what I'm saying is, if everybody just does their homework and digs, they'll get to the truth eventually. It's there. And the mistakes that are there can be oh, look, Antifa. And so it's like, yeah. And basically, oh man, they started looking at me. I was like, they're like Antifa. She has like an ACAB thing. But I was like, I think they heard me because I was like, Antifa! Antifa! Oh, you can't see them. Probably. Oh, you're right. There's light. That's Antifa. No, because the woman had the young girl had like an ACAB on the back. Oh, wait, maybe we can interview them. Hey, do you guys want to be interviewed? Do you want to do an interview? I don't think they... Do you want to do an interview? Shit, I'm too slow, man. They were walking by, and I could have been like, God. I was just... I can't even remember what the conclusion was of... I'm waving to them now. Let's see. What are they doing? Damn! I think I thought I'm too slow today. I should have been like. They're still there though. They're still lingering. I'm gonna pull up a little. Oops. That's what flashed my brights. People love it when you flash their brights. I'm flashing my brights. Let's see. Come do an interview. It was three Antifas. One of them had an ACAB patch on the back, and I'm trying to see if I can get them to come back. Anyway, so I was on a roll just then. That's why I was so slow on the uptake here. Did I answer the question? I think so. The question was, do you know how the Proud Boys were formed? And I went on just a stream of consciousness sort of thing on God, I know way too much about all this. The reason is because I just went all out and just studied all this stuff. No obligations, you know. Let me look at some of the comments. Jeremy, see if they reported you to the cops. Do not understand the shooting mini. Let's see. Well, guys, this has been fun. This has been a fun hang. I got to just kind of stream of conscious, just spit about my investigation into the Andy No stuff. I guess my final conclusion was everything really hinges on this Rolling Stone article, because what happens, oh, okay, now I remember what I was saying, is everybody's saying, fuck you, you're a Nazi to the Mumford & Sons banjo. But what happens, the reason it gets legitimized is the Daily Beast comes in, then you get your Twitter to tabloid connection. Once the Daily Beast picks it up, well, then legitimate sources pick it up that are more legitimate, like Newsweek, even though Newsweek and Rolling Stone showed actually some restraint. I think because they had done some hit jobs recently. Maybe they're trying to moderate, but Newsweek and Rolling Stone then publish articles, and they all, again, they all hyperlink to the original Rolling Stone articles. So we have this sort of house of cards that's built on not on objectivity, not on actual journalism, but on Twitter opinions and portrayal. So it's really easy to persecute somebody if they there's already a history. They've already been labeled. If Rolling Stone had got away, like let's say the Twitter storm had gotten out of control on me when they attacked me in when was it? September 30th or whatever. It was like probably October 1st. So the first thing that happens to me is the New York Times author and myself are attacked overnight. There's already people calling me a neo-Nazi, right? And then you back it up and you're like, oh, someone called me a white supremacist. Where did that come from? Oh, someone called me a conspiracy theorist. When did that come? Oh, somebody called me an alt-right troll. Well, the reason that I was able to backtrack it and figure it out is the attack came from an anarchist publication. They didn't like the article. They didn't like that I exposed the tactics and so forth. And so they wanted to paint me as a right-wing troll. And a guy named Nick Martin, who does a project called The Informant, and from what I can tell, he's mostly interested in actual neo-Nazis. So it was really surprising that he basically harangued the New York Times and bothered their editor and was like, he's not, what's his real name? That was the other thing. Is that his real name? And he was just doing this whole thing where he was trying to find out more information on me. He's like, well, it says he's a reporter, but we don't see his reports. And the reason you don't see my reports is I was an on-air reporter from 2004 to 2011 was when I left on air. During that time, my reports weren't going on online. And if they did, for the local channels I worked for, they weren't going onto YouTube. They weren't going onto like a permanent site where you can find them. And that's normal for my on-air career. Now, I do have some stuff. My last job in New York City, I actually anchored for a Muslim American television station. They actually had me as the anchor as a non-Muslim. And that was interesting. It was very left. One thing that I did, which was, in the last days of it, is I brought in a right-wing critic who is labeled as Islamophobic. And I had dialogue, at least some semblance of it. So I've been doing this thing where I don't really believe in extremists. I believe in people talking and moderating. I've been doing that since, my reporting career. So that was 2011. That clip is on YouTube. I actually used Kenji, my nickname, when I was working for that station. So that's why somebody like Nick Martin's like, show me the receipts on this guy. How do I know he's a legitimate journalist? Well, you better read my website, And so Nick Martin, who attacks me on Twitter, says, well, it looks like New York Times columnist got snookered by a right-wing troll. And then he posts a link to the anarchist calling me a conspiracy theorist, which is total BS. It's a bullshit thread. And then he writes TLDR, I think it is. Too long, didn't read. Well, thanks, dude. Thanks, Nick Martin. You just basically, as the legitimate, what do you call it? Like a blue check, is the blue check journalist. You just signed on to the anarchists post criticizing my report in the New York Times, or it's not my report, it's the New York Times report about me, which, looks at the anarchist and is critical of anarchist tactics. So you just legitimized the anarchist argument by saying too long didn't read, but it looks like the New York Times got snookered by a right-wing troll. So that's how this starts. And I put Nick Martin at the center of it, along with Nick Martin uses his real name. The anarchists of, the two publications, I don't want to even give them, credit because I don't want people to look at their website because it's all propaganda. So anyways, so that's how it goes. Now, then that gets passed on to the scene, the Portland scene. Next thing I know, and I actually respect one person amongst all this, which is there was a journalist that was upset because that was interviewed. That was a Portland Aligned journalist that was upset that their characterization wasn't used for the story. And so it was like, well, the author talked to us. Why didn't they use our assessment of this scene in Portland and anarchism? Well, they didn't use that assessment, anybody should know, would be a point of view assessment. It doesn't mean that it's not valid. It just means that this was a different article. This was an article that was critical. So anyways, I eventually had dialogued with that journalist, Antifa aligned journalist, and I found that person to be a reasonable person, a self-aware person. So many people, when you get caught up in the scene, are not self-aware and don't dare to tread outside the limits of what is okay. Because if you talk to this person who Nick Martin said was a right-wing troll, that the anarchist said was a conspiracy theorist, well then, all of a sudden, you will be excommunicated. So I understand these attacks really well because, like Brett Weinstein, in his case is even more extreme because it happened to him in more real life and probably an online manifestation as well. But he got attacked IRL in real life in the space, and was cornered and so forth. And so the rumor mill came after me in the exact same way. And so I've been able to trace these things, and they're consistent. They all start with labeling, outrage, and a couple of people with blue checks, or and Andy knows the same. He's on the other side. He's a blue check person who would be the symmetrical opposite of what Nick Martin did. Andy could insinuate something about the left, and we've seen him do that in the exact same way. So these insinuation wars of the Pacific Northwest have basically taken over the journalistic. They gave the blueprint of journalistic malpractice. Everybody that's in that scene isn't used to being a fair observer, because it's you're either with us or against us. That's the mantra for both sides. So that whole breakdown of journalism in the Pacific Northwest, I think, is a microcosm to what we see in publications all the way to Newsweek and Rolling Stone. So you guys, it's been fun. It's already 10:20 here. I'll just look at the questions one more time. Who smelted Delta, the Daily Beast? You guys, if you're just joining, Monday is going to be really interesting on the live cast. I have a 2-hour unedited clip of somebody going into the Capitol. This has not been broadcasted before. I got in contact with an East Coast journalist. He's not a professional journalist, but someone who took up, sort of documenting protests. He put on a helmet cam, and he was embedded in the right-wing protest January the 6th, and he rolled continuously for 2 hours straight. I have that video now. We are going to roll it for all 2 hours on the Monday live cast. And he and I are going to discuss it, and you'll have an experiential view of what it's like to go in through the first-person view, unedited, into the Capitol. His name is Stephen. He's my guest on Monday, 1 p.m. Please subscribe, youtube.com/unblockedlive to get the alert, or link up to my Twitter right here. And that's going to be a really interesting broadcast on Monday. And here's another teaser. The guy, the Nationalist Socialist sympathizer who I interviewed, that's at the top of publicreport.org, he's in the 2-hour video. He appears giving a speech. So this is like pretty big stuff. Maybe I'll tell the Southern Poverty Law Center, because the Southern Poverty Law Center has ignored me, since June, like 9 months. So I was assigned a representative at the Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League. We were in contact in June. Once I determined that the rioting was actually anarchists and not white supremacists, they didn't want to talk to me anymore. They were like, okay, not interested anymore in your investigation. But maybe now that I have this breaking connection with the Capitol riot, the guy that admitted to agitating the crap out, in his words, agitating the crap out of the media pen, that guy, he's from California too, the Black Ops guy, National Socialist, aka neo-Nazi sympathizer. I like saying National Socialist because what happens if I say I interviewed a neo-Nazi, then people will start Googling Jeremy Lee Quinn, neo-Nazi. Oh, that's what happened with the Mumford & Sons guy. If you went on Twitter and Google and you put Mumford & Sons, the suggested search would be Mumford & Sons Nazi. And that's what happens. So many people start Googling it, and you start to wonder, gosh, are people doing it on purpose? Is there some kind of, can you get bots to do it too? So a bot starts Googling this person and Nazi, then it comes up to be suggested by Google. That's a technique, These people who are behind kind of the social justice, wars, internet wars, they can pull shit like this. I was blocked. I was shadow banned on Twitter for a long time. That's also why my count is so low. People couldn't see my comments. If I commented on things, it wouldn't come up on anybody. So I got shadow banned on Twitter myself. And I think it's still up. We'll have to check. Anyway, that guy, that's why I say National Socialist sympathizer guy. He's in the 2-hour video that we're going to stream on Monday, and he appears grabbing the open mic and giving a mission accomplished speech in front of the Capitol. And this is the same guy that I interviewed on January the 7th, a day later at the Capitol, talking to me about basically taking responsibility for some coordination. We're going to try to make a determination if he was there alone and he's just some guy who likes to take credit, or if he had a larger posse with him. My opinion is I don't have any evidence that, especially because he showed up on January 7th by himself. He seemed like a guy who didn't have a lot of friends, who wanted to take credit for this moment in history kind of thing. Interesting guy. I would interview him again in a heartbeat. There's some interviews you just got to do. Enrique Tarrio, I had to do that interview. He was too interesting of a figure to ignore. And the pressure was, it's a shame. I hope the journalist that I recounted that was kind of adversarial with me from Portland when I was being attacked because of the New York Times article, she and I corresponded a little. I invited her to be on the podcast. I hope she reconsiders, because I think we'd have a really interesting conversation. But one of the reasons she didn't want to do the podcast was that I had interviewed Enrique Tarrio. That interview is being transferred. I think it's actually offline right now. I let it be up for the duration of its relevancy. I did it as like a breaking news thing because I interviewed Tarrio in September. My feeling of Tarrio is he sort of made his bed and lost the moderation war. The guy Thad that I interviewed on New Year's Eve, who was friends with the Black Lives Matter leader, they kicked him out. They kicked him out of the Proud Boys because he had that discussion on New Year's Eve. My first live stream was New Year's Eve with Thad of the Proud Boys in Utah and his friend Jakari, who was Black Lives Matter chapter leader. And we had a discussion about common ground, trying to figure things out. He was kicked out of the Proud Boys for that. After that, I was like, all right, these guys have no interest in moderating, So I wasn't surprised on January the 6th when I found out he'd been kicked out and wasn't even at the Capitol. The guy that the Proud Boys were not allowing moderate voice. They were censoring moderate voices. Well, when you censor moderate voices, what happens? Then your extreme voices are loudest. When your extreme voices are loudest, guess what? All of a sudden they're storming the Capitol. So I don't have a lot of sympathy at this point. And I'd say I never really did. I only was parsing how they were being misportrayed as ethno-nationalists when they weren't a platform ethno-nationalist group. They were more like patriots or libertarian or anarcho-patriot, Second Amendment types. So anyway, long story short, the Tarrio interview, I'm going to transfer to the Uncovered Anarchist because I think he belongs with the anarchists. They're two peas in a pod. And I actually would describe him as kind of anarcho-patriot in the sense that he probably hasn't studied anarchism, but you don't have to like have a seal of approval of anarchist scholars to be living your life like an anarchist. Living your life like an anarchist means you're philosophically, you're against coercive authority. The Proud Boys are anti-authoritarian. The reason that they fight with, going all the way back to the earlier conversation about how they started fighting in New York, the press club. This is getting back to Gavin McInnes. He was doing a Death of an Anarchist performance where he was portraying, it was probably and as a Japanese American, I'm guessing it was not a politically correct portrayal. He played the Japanese anarchist assassin, I believe, or he played the guy getting assassinated. But it was an assassination attempt by an anarchist in Japanese history, and the assassin was killed. So Gavin McInnes put this play on where he played the anarchist, and he had a fake katana with him. And again, he might have been playing the other character. I'm not sure, but it was like a 2-person play with a Japanese guy and him playing a Japanese guy too. So I'm sure it was politically incorrect. And look, dude, I am the fucking expert of Japanese accents. Japanese accents, when done well, of American English can be hilarious because Japanese, and that's just built on syllabic structure. For example, let me tell you this. McDonald's, if you say it with Japanese, you would break down McDonald's by Japanese syllabic structure. Japanese syllabic structure is consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. So when you have a word like katana, karaoke, karaoke, right? Karaoke, katana, futon. So it's always, it's consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. So if you have a word like McDonald's, where you only have, you have a ton of consonants, but you only have 2 vowels, is that right? In McDonald's, then for them, they have to insert vowels to make it into a Japanese version of an English word. So McDonald's becomes Makudonarudo. Makudonarudo. Makudonarudo is McDonald's. So that's why you have all this great. When I was doing comedy, I would actually do a character named Kenji America, the struggling Japanese game show host. And I would come up and I fooled an open mic for the better part of a year into thinking I was actually from Japan. And I did it because I would wear glasses and people couldn't tell where I was, who I was. And I would fake a Japanese accent and I would do stand-up comedy with a Japanese accent. Anyways, if done well, it could have been funny. I would have loved to see a tape of that, and I would tell you if it was offensive or funny. My guess would be making fun of an assassination of an anarchist with a Japanese actor and Gavin McInnes probably would have been interesting to watch. That's all I'm going to say. Now, I know I've committed a total heresy. What happens after the performance is this. There are protesters protesting the performance, that they're neo-Nazis and racists or whatever. He comes out and he wields the katana. Now, it's a fake katana from a play that he just did in which either he or the other actor are murdered. You're not going to bring a real fucking katana onto a stage. Are you crazy? But they portray it as he's been wielding a knife at them. And so much so that even the expert that I talked to on white supremacy, who I've been talking to since the summer, I have a guy at Chapman University, and we have debates about this content. And I've got to get him to do the live podcast at some point. I think it'll be a really interesting conversation. But he even thought that it was a real katana. I was like, no, this can't be a real katana. He just did a play with it. I've done tons of comedy shows and plays. If you bring a real weapon on this stage, you're an idiot. Bottom line, you get stage weapons. If you're a comedian, I was a sketch comedian, stand-up comedian, an actor. You never bring a real weapon on the stage. So he brandishes this fake weapon. They go berserk, whatever. There's a fight later. That's the big thing where the two guys are arrested. Now, the Antifa Black Bloc throws a bottle of liquid at them first. Then they retaliate and they beat the shit out of the Antifa people. The Antifa people never show their face. The New York City, it becomes political, says we're going to make because the press is basically compromised, they buy into the idea that these are white supremacists. So the attorney general or whoever's prosecuting, the district attorney rather in Manhattan, throws the book at these guys. They go to jail for like 3 years. Now, the white supremacy talking point's bullshit because one of them has a black wife and kid. The other one is Jewish. So it's like fucking journalists are asleep at the switch in letting these same talking points run wild about these guys being white supremacists when it's just not the fucking case. It's something else. Now, do white supremacists show up eventually, either as infiltrators or, in some regional groups? Yes, they do. Is the OK sign probably the stupidest fucking joke that you could ever make if you're a group that's own members are facing charges, and it's brought on by the white supremacy, like the idea that they're flashing a white supremacy sign? Yes, that's the dumbest fucking joke you could ever have if two of your members are facing actual jail time, and it's spurred by this idea that you're all white supremacists. Then you probably don't want to perpetuate a trolling out there. But so anyways, I'm tired. I'm gonna go to sleep. I think we parsed about every single controversial topic from the Proud Boys to Andy No. that'll get me locked up in leftist heresy jail because I because I was willing to have that conversation. But you know what? Fuck it. You got to just talk about this shit. It's all an investigation, and I will. That's the hill I'll die on. Is that it's okay to investigate the stuff. And if any anarchist or anti-fascist wants to debate me about any of the assertions that I've made, then come on my show and let's do it. Monday's going to be great. It's going to be a 2-hour show of point of view going right into the Capitol. This guy and I, he's a young guy. And we're going to kind of have a conversation, and we'll get to know his point of view, and we're going to dialogue, and we'll find out what's up. So they don't always help themselves out much. I think true. The plastic sword. Oh yeah, but see, they took the plastic sword and made it sound like Gavin McInnes was this fucking crazy neo-Nazi running through the streets of the East or the Upper Manhattan with a sword, getting ready to fucking cut you, like he was getting ready to cut anti-fascists. But anyways, man, I've started writing the book on this, and it's just like the amount of misinformation is insane. It's basically the whole thing has been a propaganda war. And if you're in the press, you had to be on one side or the other. And very few pieces were written that dared to do both. I mean, when Farrah Stockman, who wrote the New York Times piece in which my work is referenced, she's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, and she's mixed race. She's part black. And they attacked her because she was moderate and questioning if the anarchist tactic and the coordination was helping or hurting Black Lives Matter. Her original article was, "Are anarchist tactics helping or hurting Black Lives Matter?" Well, what happens? The New York Times, probably their web department, changes the title to "The Truth About Today's Anarchists." Well, that lofty title gets everybody pissed off. What? The New York Times is going to tell us the truth about today's anarchists? So I understand they're getting set up and stuff, getting upset and stuff. So anyway, yeah, that's that story. That's why I was surprised when my final project was Spiked that was published. They changed the headline on that too. I'm guessing that's common practice now, is that publications, if they think a better headline is going to get engagement and trend online, then they'll just change your headline. So now I need to negotiate final approval for a headline if I'm submitting a piece. I don't know who I'm going to submit to. Do you guys know any publications that would actually fucking print me? I've been thinking maybe Reason, the Libertarians, maybe the Wall Street Journal. I would if somebody that was on the left would actually print me, then I'd take it. But the left doesn't want to deal with any of this. But I don't even know a good publication to look at anymore. The Hill, maybe. The Hill. I don't know if Politico is too left. I'm not sure. Politico is aligned with Pointer. I couldn't get them to publish me or anything. Quillette. Yeah, maybe Quillette. Reason. Yeah, The Hill. Yeah, I was thinking The Hill too. I got to check those out because I went with this group Spiked, and I like it. I like that there's no. My joke is I like that there's no fucking pop-up ads for earwax in the middle of my article. I have these gorgeous pictures, and it's laid out, and you don't have to like scroll down and all of a sudden you see some gross. What is it with fucking earwax? I never Googled it. I swear to God, there's a pop-up ad for earwax removal or just some disgusting thing. There'll be some pop-up ad. It'll just be it'll be like pus or something. And I don't know why they think you're going to click on it, because you're getting this like pop-up ad in the middle of your article that you're reading. Anyways, I digress. So I have two qualifications. If someone's going to print me, I'm not going to accept any money because whatever they're going to give me, like $150, fuck it. It's better for me to not accept the money and be a total pain in the ass about every word and how I want it. Won't take the money. My second rule is they can't have a paywall. That's why it's tough for me I do the Wall Street Journal. I don't want my stuff to be printed and then people feel like they have to spend $1 to get the Washington Post for 2 weeks and then be charged $25 or whatever. So none of that shit. And then the last rule is I don't want pop-up ads in the middle of the text. If it's on the side or if it's the end of the article, that's okay. But I don't want fucking, car commercials in the middle of my writing. So you can see why I'm a pain in the ass and I can't get my stuff published. I have to, even the Wall Street Journal, I will submit to them again, but they're like, that's not what we do. They're like, I read it. Thank you for sharing, but that's not what we do. So I don't know why I'm making that voice. He actually probably was a nice guy. I'm making him sound oafish. Anyways, remember when the web was free of takeover ads for a few years? Back in the day. Paywalls, ads. I don't know. I think the reason that I'm doing journalism and I'm doing it okay is because it's not my job. I'm doing it because I actually love it. And I'm not making money off of it. Although I'm going to be able to make, this is good news. I'm going to be able to make some money because all those networks that stole my footage from the Capitol, they're going to have to settle. So they're going to have to settle. And that means that I never sold out by selling my work to them, but I get to make demands because they used it and took it from me. And so that's good. So maybe this year I'll make money to, pay it back. But the reason that I've been able to have so much integrity, I've had no deadline. I haven't had to rush anything. I haven't had to answer to an editor. That doesn't mean I haven't wanted to have my stuff edited. My parents actually have been really cool. They've read everything that I've published on publicreport.org multiple times. So, but I don't have to cave to the demands of engagement. This is a publication. This is our audience. This is how we have to engage. I didn't have to deal with any of that shit. It was off the radar enough that the attacks, I was able to keep at bay. So I think it was a really rare case that I was able to get the work out, and I would love to continue to do that. I want to keep doing the podcast. If I can figure out a way to monetize the podcast, then maybe I can make it my job. But I don't want to be called a grifter. But I think if a podcast is a conversation, that's not a grift. That's welcoming good debate and conversation into the world. And I feel like I'm done, or I want to be done, probably as of May 1st. Put it on your calendar. May 1st is probably going to be the next time the Antifa groups explode. And that's because the May Day protests were an annual anarchist and communist workers' day protest in the Pacific Northwest every year before all of this stuff started happening. So they're going to try to stir things up for May the 1st, no doubt. They were going 2 nights ago, or last night. Look at my Twitter if you want to see all the updates on how they were going hard in Portland last night. So anyway, this is coming down. We got to get you on Tim. Yeah, if anybody knows Tim Pool, I talked to Tim Pool. It's funny. I retweeted Tim Pool. And so they try to say, he retweeted Tim Pool. He's alt-right. And I told Brett that comment the very first time I met Brett. And he's like, saying that retweeting Tim Pool means you're alt-right. Oh, and the tweet that I retweeted was Tim Pool saying that President Trump fell for the trap during that one debate and should have just said, fuck all white supremacists. And I thought that was a funny thing, the president should have said, fuck all white supremacists. And because I retweeted that, even though it was anti-white supremacist, they don't fucking care. They're like, he retweeted to Tim Pool. He's all right. He's all right. You know, it's just insane. It doesn't make any sense anymore. That's because nobody's reading anything. They're not even reading these articles. When I posted the very article I wrote, I told Brett this. I posted the article I wrote on Spiked, and Twitter was like, are you sure you want to post this? Twitter put up a message. You haven't read it yet. Well, I wrote it, so I don't have to, but obviously enough people are doing that now where they're not reading the articles that Twitter has to put up a warning and say, hey, are you sure you want to retweet this without reading it? It's because they're just retweeting the headlines. Nobody has time to read these articles. They just retweet what, reinforms the rage trend. If it's on the rage trend, ride that wave. So anyway, yeah, you guys take it easy. I think it's only grifting if it's deliberately manipulative. I agree, Ira. I agree. There's a couple of these signs, trolling, grifting, they're using them as labels to try to discredit journalism, and it's not going to work anymore. Their reign is over. You guys have a good night. It's been real. And check in on Monday, 1 p.m., the 2-hour point of view presentation inside the Capitol on Unblocked Live. Subscribe, youtube.com/unblockedlive. See you next time. Adios. Gracias a ustedes.